Our tale commences with the introduction of the simulation game called Jiang Hu Story. It was a virtual network involving a martial arts game, a game that was known for its extraordinary realism. Players used a gaming helmet and sensor devices to enter their imaginary world, a world of the martial arts arena. Players could enter into their own Jiang Hu to determine their destinies. They could do anything but needed to be wary of the other players, as well as the NPCs, important sects, and other AI. One of the more prominent sects within the game was known as the Wudang sect. Players were not allowed to enter the sect with weapons, and no one was allowed to disobey the commands. They were also told not to steal weapons from the particular pond. Those who violated such rules of the Wudang sect were issued an extermination order and sentenced to death. Master Xiangzhong riled up the crowd. The people were graced with his unique presence. They welcomed him, and he was told of the Taoist Chongming, who arranged for their meeting in light of essential matters. Of course, like all the others, the master himself also deprived himself of his weapon. The game was also notable for not having a particular storyline with events capable of being influenced by the players. The people of the Wudang sect were happy to grace him even with his sword, as he was a particular case and a mighty presence. However, Master Xiangzhong remarked that he was no exception to the rules because of his rank, and he honorably respected them. His humble response received a gracious reaction from the crowd. He was led to the location of the meeting. However, observing them in private was a particular player, a player who had planned so much for this moment to come. He was finally in reach of the famous sword Tai Yi. The player was glad that the respected master honored the rules and ended up leading all of the crowd away. The player was no longer a proper disciple of the Wudang sect. The Jiejian Pond was a restricted area where no one was allowed to trespass. Within the pool, visitors were only permitted to receive their weapons to leave. Li Huang reflected that it was entirely normal for him to take his gun, and he was only a visitor now. The blade was within his reach at last. Li Huang grabbed the legendary sword and plunged it from the pool. Surprisingly, he tossed away the knife soon after, drawing the attention of the other sect members, who launched their attacks at him, reducing his health bar to 0. It was just as he had planned. We were explained that it was part of his strategy to obtain the sword for his mission. Thankfully, they could revive in this game after death, and although he was able to obtain the legendary sword as a reward, he lost all other equipment and skills as a consequence. The entire plan was just a trap that he employed, from the forging of the letter to the luring of the legendary master and disarming his sword so that the players could target him. This was solely done to ensure he would receive the blade, which was an essential item of his mission. Realizing that his arduous challenge had been completed, Li Huang logged off from the game and took a deep breath. He had prepared so much only the past few days to ensure that he could obtain the sword. While he was brushing, his classmate Dai Hui commended him for having the guts to obtain the legendary blade. He was quick to notice that Li Huang possessed the Master's Blade, a weapon that he stole from the sacred pond. Hui proposed for him to sell the sword, as he would readily buy at any price. A relaxed Li Huang replied that his item was definitely not for sale, which was something that greatly annoyed Dai Hui, who was only interacting with him for the purpose of obtaining the blade. At the LGE Academy, Li Huang walked with his classmates, who discussed that something grand occurred within the game. Li Huang's attention was snatched by Yao Mengjie, who thanked him for teaching him how to jump in the game.
Do you want to know the name of this manga, along with all the manga names of the recaps we did in our channel? How about also the chapter numbers our recaps end? You can simply ask the names in our Discord community for free or become a donor to get them all in one place. You can either be a donor in Patreon or be a member in our YouTube channel. Just scan this QR code or go to the link in the description to become a donor. Moreover, becoming a donor automatically makes you a VIP member of our Discord server with over tens of thousands of members.
Not only that, she had also brought over a friend, Wu Shi. The girl was honored to meet him as she had heard he was a solidified master. Crashing their meeting was Dai Hui. The group collectively discussed wanting to play the Jiang Hu story. Dai Hui mocked the boy for using shameless techniques, as he had stolen the sword belonging to Master Xiangzhong himself. That revelation alone gained an absurd reaction from all of his peers, who could not believe that he performed such a feat, many of whom wanted to be tutored under his wing. Li Huang shrugged off the praise, but a persistent Dai Hui restated his offer to buy the legendary sword, this time applying a slightly different approach. Li Huang intelligently reflected that his classmate was using the killing order of the sect as a farce, and instead had his eyes only on the Tai's sword. Just losing the blade itself affected the whole of Wudang sect's authority. However, if one could return the same sword to the master, one could receive an abundance of rewards for the deed. Li Huang realized that Dai Hu was only looking out for the sword for that reason. He did his best to persuade him, going as far as to state that the million disciples of the Wudang sect would obviously hunt for the thief. Huang contemplated that Jiang Hu would inevitably force the sect to abandon their rules in order to possess the sword and reclaim their authority. It was not something he feared, but instead welcomed with open arms, as he desired a more exciting run of the game. Dai Hui was perplexed by his stubborn behavior. Huang and his friend shared a relatively amicable relationship prior to the launch of the game, but ever since its release, they separated because of their ideals inside the game. Dai Hui was one to prefer a life of happiness and revenge during his playthrough. On the other hand, Huang capitalized on completing missions and enjoyed the explorations more. Playing the game usually allowed the player to discover details that made the playthrough more entertaining. At first, it did not affect their real lives, but eventually Dai Hui argued with the other players, severing his connection with Huang. After confronting the other players, Hui began to lose his calm demeanor and only longed to fight Huang. However, Huang was unable to escape because of his missions. He refused to stop halfway through. In the end, Dai Hui died at the hands of his enemies and exited the game only to blame his friend for his death. Huang did not know how to respond. His friend had never accepted his detriments and blamed the other players for his downfalls. After the incident, Huang made fewer friends and realized that he was not naive. The three of his friends grew together and drew away Dai Hui. Seeing as no other approach could work on his former friend, Dai Hui challenged him to a battle with the condition of winning over the blade if he prevailed. Obviously, Huang did not treat him seriously and left with his friends who were more eager to know about the details of his special mission. Hui was bent on enacting his revenge inside the game. After they returned to the dormitory, the man patiently waited for Huang to log back into the game. However, he entered a state of sleep to annoy him further. Huang logged back into the game at last and hoped to complete more tasks. He observed his message log, which was actually clogged with new requests to buy the sword. More importantly, Huang could sense the presence of a player nearby. His eyes laid on the man wearing a white robe with his purple sheath sword. It was Qi Sijia, the legendary player who was considered the third strongest within the Wudang sect. In this particular game, the stretches of power were not determined by raw strength. The game instead focused on the level of cultivation, which notably determined their power. The Xintian sect was one of the groups within Jianghu that assessed players' level of cultivation systematically. It included detailed information and constantly updated their cultivation progress. Players were required to nominate themselves to the sect in order to receive a rank. In plain words, the Xintian sect was an intelligence agency. Returning to the man standing right in front of him, Huang scoffed at his chances of landing right next to the competent disciple of the Wudang sect. Their battle began with Sijia aiming right for the one responsible for stealing the sword. Sijia descended from the skies to launch a peculiar move. Huang dodged and tried to counter with his shaking mountain palm, a move that his opponent mocked for incorrectly utilizing. He claimed that he would readily teach him how to channel the move, so long as he handed over the sword. Huang cleverly tried to feign ignorance as his first strategy, but Sijia was in no mood to let up. He lunged forth with his blade. Following his previous tactic, Huang tried to evade as best he could without countering, to further his act of innocence. After the two gained some more distance, his opponent commended him for his skills. Huang continued playing the innocent bystander, but Sijia asserted that it was of no use as he had thoroughly investigated the matter to conclude his verdict. Receiving his words, Huang deployed a different strategy. He boldly took the blame for stealing the mystical sword of the renowned master. Sijia was glad that he was no longer holding his intentions back. Huang stated that he was trying to play around for fun and praised his opponent. Sijia decided to get a little more serious. When Huang tried provoking him, he cleverly replied that stealing the blade was not enough to conclude his combat abilities. Sijia used his Rao Yun's sword and unleashed its wrath. Huang had precisely aimed for this moment and countered with a precise strike, thinking that it was enough to win. However, Sijia safely leaped away, stating that his martial arts were actually useless in comparison despite his evasive maneuvers. Huang declared having to use his real weapon instead. Intrigued by his declaration, Sijia descended to the ground to inquire about his mysterious weapon. He wondered if it were a sword or a knife and looked forward to it. Huang realized that he was just being mocked for his martial arts skills. Sijia displayed an impressive speed, being able to move so fast as to cast multiple afterimages of himself. Capitalizing on the moment, Huang implored him to observe as he was about to pull out his weapon. While he was distracted, Huang slammed him with his giant blade, depleting a bunch of his health and crashing him into the ground. He playfully questioned how he performed, only to receive an agitated reply from his opponent, who couldn't believe what had just happened. Huang, at his opponent's confusion, Sijia was thoroughly unimpressed by the weapon he had just been attacked with. Huang expressed that he never mentioned what kind of blade he would unveil from his inventory. Huang reflected that he was capable of carrying such a giant sword inside his inventory as a surprise. Sijia questioned why he was not finishing him off, as he had lost his ability to move after being hit by the attack. Huang claimed that he had not much else to do after defeating him aside from tending to his missions. He was not particularly interested in the concept of killing. Sijia remarked that he would continue hunting him despite his merciful display, as he had quite a bounty on his head. He enticed him to make his move now to save the effort for later. Considering his words carefully, Huang was actually about to act upon them by dealing the final blow, but Sijia begged for mercy contrary to his bold display only moments prior. He negotiated with Huang, stating that he would keep the contents of his weapon private. Huang was fascinated by the offer, prompting Sijia to assert that he was not going to tell anyone of his identity. He playfully advised him to run away swiftly before he initiated his hunt again. Huang accepted the deal and left the area. Reading his post messages, he realized that his sword possessed quite the value for this much attention. In spite of the tempting offers, he decided not to sell the sword for the sake of entertaining events. His current objective was to figure out how to escape this cunning forest. At the Wudang Mountain, Dai Hui was restrained from going up the mountain as he was not a part of the Wudang sect. He had initially planned to gather clues by going up the mountain but faced an absurd number of NPCs guarding the area, not to mention the other players. One of them was the notable Yuan Ji, who greeted him and inquired why he was not tending to his missions. Dai Hui remarked that something had unfolded in the Jianghu, prompting him to set his missions aside to aim for a different task. Yuan Ji bluntly stated that the mountain had been closed off. He also assessed that the request was made on behalf of a member. They knew that the person who stole the special sword was still on the mountain, and consequently, the clan members prohibited an outsider from climbing atop the mountain as well as exiting the mountain. Dai Hui realized that Ling Fei Xiao and Gu Yunfei were most probably responsible for this situation and tried to use Yuan Ji as a medium to communicate. He requested on behalf of his friends to go up the mountain. However, their conversation was overheard by none other than Gu Yunfei, who stated that any violations on behalf of the rules would suffer adequate punishment. Even though he was far away, he was still capable of hearing their talk. Yuan Ji recommended he heed the advice as their sect rules were supreme. Even though they were inside the game, the rules of the NPCs were actually supreme and beyond the likes of the players. They were not mindless beings to be manipulated with ease. Not only that, Gu Yunfei was one of the 6 great disciples. His friend recommended he let this challenge aside. When Yuan Ji was asked why he was not looking for the thief himself, he stated that it was not worth the task as the rewards that came with finding the sword were not enough to match the dangerous efforts involved in obtaining it. Finding the sword was the only main goal of the sect at present. He also reminded his friend of the various hidden branches and remarked that if he helped Yunfei complete the protection mission, he'd probably trigger another reward more valuable than obtaining the sword, something he was more confident about. Dai Hui admired his thought process but still stubbornly set his eyes on the blade. Inside the Wudang Mountain, he heard the chatter of numerous people arguing over a sword. Dai Hui deemed himself lucky that Huang was nearby and jumped to the conclusion that he was caught. His expectations were tarnished when he witnessed 2 players arguing with each other instead. The players were accusing each other of stealing the sword without proper grounds. It was obvious that the Jianghu story was a martial arts game, meaning that Huang's whereabouts were nothing more than a brush painting. The other players actually did not know of his identity and only shot assumptions in the dark. The case was different for Dai Hui, however, who was perhaps one of the few lucky souls who knew his identity. He celebrated prematurely and thought that he would surely obtain the sword from his friend. After an arduous search of 2 hours, an exhausted Dai Hui made 0 progress and cursed his chances. Suddenly he heard the familiar voice of Li Huang from nearby and followed his direction. Dai Hui carefully considered his steps and observed the area. His eyes suddenly set firmly on the legendary blade lying on the ground, leading him to confidently assume that Li Huang and the opposing party were both dead. Realizing that there was no other better opportunity, he advanced forth to obtain the sword, except another player grabbed it and scattered before he could. The man also announced stealing the sword, and was actually struck down by the other players who wanted the same. The legendary blade fell on the ground between 2 players who opposed each other. Lin and Jiang were hell-bent on obtaining the prestigious weapon, and battled over it. They were equally well fought, and resumed their pretentious battle. Observing them in secret was the cunning Dai Hui, who carefully waited for them to weaken each other in order to obtain the sword. However, 1 whole hour passed, and their battle continued. They also made quite a mess out of it by announcing it to the surrounding players. An endless battle took place between the many players over the Tai sword, their numbers slowly decreasing with each battle. Dai Hui desired to be the last one standing among them. Suddenly, the crowd dispersed at the very sight of a particular individual. They were deathly afraid of his presence and ran away without batting another eye at the sword. Dai Hui himself observed that this individual was none other than Liu Ruifeng, the devil of Jianghu himself. Ruifeng's presence was enough to fend off the surrounding players. Dai Hui noted that even among the top 3 disciples of the Wudang sect, he was arguably at the top in player cultivation. Yuan Ji's cultivation level was also high, but even he would be unable to defeat the devil in actual combat. The 3rd disciple was Siji, and even though Dai Hui did not know much about him, he surely knew that he boasted first-class combat skills. Between the 3 of them was the devil Ruifeng, someone who focused simply on revenge and was a war-thirsty devil. He was a combat fanatic, with his true powers rivaling that of the 3 disciples. With his presence, the remaining players begged for mercy, but were taken down by his wrath. He killed them without batting another eye, taking away their equipment and skills. Ruifeng's eyes were directed at the person hiding in the woods. His sharp, perceptive skills were enough for the task as he called out for Dai Hui. Even though Dai Hui had not moved a single inch, he was noticed. Since he refused to come out of his hiding, Ruifeng took more severe measures to drive the mole out. Dai Hui was in serious trouble, merely amazed by the devil's powers. It was revealed that Ruifeng had actually noticed a different spy and hunted him instead, leading Dai Hui to arrogantly think of his chances as the chosen one who could not die. Ruifeng was not one to finish his battles without having a bloodied sword. Dai Hui was able to hide away safely and decided that he would enact his perfect strategy on the praying mantis himself. At this point of the story, every disciple of the Wudang sect was looking for the Yang Huai sword. There was one who did not look for the sword and merely sat to chat with his friends. Surprisingly, it was Dai Hui who instructed his friends to do his bidding after explaining that Ruifeng had stolen the sword. His subordinates posed glaring doubts as their opponent was the devil, Ruifeng himself. Dai Hui confirmed that they would steal the sword, and it was only possible to do so from him, as he was the safest place the sword could be anywhere inside the game. He thought that it was perfect for him to take care of the players trying to hunt for the sword, as Ruifeng was the type to hold grudges, a formidable player that no one would dare to challenge. Dai Hui remarked that it was best to let him keep the sword and steal it eventually. One of them shared that their plan would be entirely foiled if the Wudang sect found out the information about the sword. Dai Hui exclaimed that it had been roughly 20 minutes since Ruifeng possessed the sword, and the system's announcements were all irrelevant to the fact, which meant that he was out there roaming free without being captured. Not only that, those who were killed once by him were known not to fight him again. Dai Hui noted that it was not that their opponent was strong, but instead he possessed a glaring weakness. Sensing the aura of Ruifeng, Dai Hui thought it appropriate to begin his move. The powerful people exuded an immense aura that intimidated others, as everyone in the game was afraid of death. They could not dare challenge the strong, who were the very definition of death, which was why the strongest in the game often wandered away from the others. Most players naturally avoided him and maintained distance to protect themselves. The reason Dai Hui thought that he possessed a weakness was because Ruifeng relied on this particular aspect to defend himself by cementing his strong status. However, this kind of strategy would not work on people who were prepared. Dai Hui passed him by, waiting for the perfect moment for him to let his guard open. Feeling that it was a proper moment to slay the dragon, he launched a critical attack from behind, directly impacting Ruifeng. The palm technique that he mainly used targeted the internal parts of the body, rendering an opponent continuous pain after the initial strike. He thought not even the top-ranking masters could deal with an ability like that. Ruifeng questioned if he was seeking death, but Dai Hui wasted no breath on communication and focused on his assault. Even though he was afraid of him, that was precisely the reason he could play out his brilliant strategy in such a way. Ruifeng was on the back foot and desired to kill him before retreating. However, Dai Hui had already driven his blade into his body. He desired to surpass the devil and consoled himself that he was facing a player. Ruifeng, while bleeding out, exclaimed that he initially thought an evil force was after him, but now he knew it was just a clueless idiot. His health dissipated to zero as he was killed to respawn elsewhere. Dai Hui scoffed at him for trying to pretend that he had the upper hand even while facing death. Now, what was left for him was to obtain the Tai sword at last. Dai Hui had obtained his perfect victory. He grabbed the unique blade and was content with obtaining the item at last. Feeling an overwhelming sense of confidence in himself after beating Ruifeng, the other players actually thought that it had been a revenge plot and had no idea about the sword. At the Wudang sect entrance, although most players were actually looking for the blade, there was a large amount of focus on wandering around the entrance. People sought to obtain more information about the sword to gather the mission details. Not only that, they needed to snatch the opportunity to form missions within the area as the rewards were promising. They thought that the thief who stole the Yang Huai blade would come back to steal yet another item. We were revealed the immortal sect leader of Wudang Zihe. He apologized to the Grandmaster Yang Huai that they had lost his blade. As always, the Honorable Master exclaimed that there was not much to worry about in that regard. Dai Hui made his way towards the entrance while everyone outside of the hall was speaking highly of the sword. No one knew that this individual had no business participating in these conversations and observing from afar. In his mind, Dai Hui was the perfect contender, the chosen one who brought the sword. Finally, it was announced that a particular disciple had successfully retrieved the blade of the master. Many doubted his words, while others looked forward to the details. The sect leader ordered his presence at once. Dai Hui made his way inside the hall and presented the mighty blade to the sect leader, claiming that he had sacrificed much to obtain this heavenly weapon. The sect leader was surprisingly in a good mood and congratulated him. Dai Hui's confidence began to waver with his unusual words. When the sword was presented to its owner, the legendary Yang Huai himself, he immediately unsheathed the blade to call forth its power. Dai Hui was convinced after the majestic display that it was indeed the famous sword with an unreachable potential. However, Yang Huai's face showed otherwise. Yang Huai declared that his stay in the sect needed to extend as he had been presented with a counterfeit sword. The revelation shocked even the sect leader. Trembling thoughts came flooding into Dai Hui's mind. Who could not believe that the blade was actually fake? He had put so much effort into obtaining it from even the devil. He was confident that he grabbed the original blade after killing Ruifeng and was satisfied with the fact. And then came flooding the thought of Ruifeng switching inventories before death. Dai Hui was baffled, and all of his troublesome thoughts pointed in one direction. Everything that had happened thus far was a scheme weaved and manipulated by Li Huang, who was the mastermind. There was no doubt about it. The plan was definitely Li Huang's. He had intelligently made use of everyone's excitement by deploying the fake swords in random locations, a trap set to make one lose their sense of reason. Dai Hui could not comprehend how he could be so cunning, and he still had yet to figure it out. He could not understand why he was using such an elaborate tactic instead of staying in hiding quietly. Dai Hui's day only worsened as yet another disciple declared having found the actual sword of the Yang Hui master. The declaration itself alarmed him. He could not believe how someone else found the same sword. The master observed the blade with Dai Hui, realizing that it was also a fake. And he was indeed correct. The sword was a counterfeit. The public descended to chaos with the unveiling of two fake swords at the same time. Dai Hui realized what Li Huang had planned, why he had used this many fake swords to lure the players, and deployed even more out in the open. Nothing was more evident to him than Huang concocting this elaborate strategy. When the immortal sect leader questioned how the Yang Hui master determined if a blade was real or fake, he sarcastically responded that there was no way to tell by merely glancing at the sword. With this revelation, Dai Hui contemplated that Huang may have already exited Wudang Mountain without a scratch because of this strategy, leading everyone else to a dead end. The people were far too focused on fighting each other for a fake sword when in the end, the regular players couldn't find the real sword and rebuild their reputation. Even if they did find out about the possibility of a fake sword, their sense of specialty would dissuade them from following their rationale, making them present the sword that they obtained after their valiant efforts, only to be turned down by the Yang Hui master. This brilliant strategy and mental warfare were all part of Huang's game. It allowed for the perfect loop for the players to run back and look for the sword without regard to reason. Such was the humanity of the players. Anyone could play the game, but the worst part about the game was that it was constantly unpredictable, with chaotic events occurring all over, including the killing of other players and making enemies of your comrades. These events were caused by a controlling hand, someone else is doing from behind. The worst part, according to Dai Hui, was that one person influenced all of these events. He visibly began sweating after realizing what he had done. He had perhaps committed the greatest atrocity in the game while trying to steal the sword, which was making him an enemy of the bloodthirsty devil Ruifeng. He could have focused on prioritizing his level, but now he was under the watchful eye of the devil. Things were looking bad for Dai Hui thanks to Wang's schemes, who vowed to pay Huang dearly for what he had done. While he still had time to think about his next plan, Dai Hui thought that Ruifeng was most likely not resurrected immediately. He was at least confident that no one on the Wudang Mountain was capable of harming him in the meantime. The very thought of the counterfeit swords plagued his mind. He needed to find a party capable of assisting him in finding the real weapon to save himself more time. The problem was the nature of the game, as Huang could endlessly deploy an inconceivable number of fake swords for all of them. Dai Hui was in a rush to find him at once. He contacted Boren to relay that they were all played by Huang. He was shocked when Dai Hui explained the details and conveyed that Huang's strategy was to lure attention away from him. Boren confirmed that it was a conceivable idea and thought that Huang couldn't leave the mountain aside from the main path. Boren was struck with the realization that there was one particular path no one ever frequented. They were the woods of the rugged mountain. Boren suggested that they ambush him at once. However, Dai Hui's communication log shut off. Dai Hui was not the type to prepare countermeasures, except that a confident presence had stolen all of his attention away. It was the devastating Ruifeng, who was eagerly approaching the fool who targeted him. Ruifeng questioned why the naive player began to tremble the moment he laid his eyes on him. Alarmed by his presence, Dai Hui's body commanded him to form an escape strategy. He wanted to flee from the battle, deathly afraid of the strong presence that had graced him. Ruifeng, using his impressive speed, teleported right in front of Dai Hui in mere moments and playfully inquired why he was running away. He clarified that his strategies involved more than just killing. Ruifeng wanted to investigate the matter deeper. He queried him with an amusing question, asking if he knew about the essential rule of the Wudang sect. Dai Hui's body began to tremble, realizing the exact rule that he had violated. The most important rule of the Wudang sect maintained that the killing of a fellow disciple would result in death, a rule that he was guilty of violating. Although the rule only pertained to the character inside the game, it was still a more severe punishment than simple abolishment. The other punishments included expelling a member from the sect or forbidding them from deploying a particular martial art. However, within the game, the dead were also resurrected, and their martial arts could never be regained, a fate that was much worse than deleting your account. Instead, it was advised to start over newly. Ruifeng had cornered his prey and relieved him, stating that he was not a wrong person himself. First, he asked about the items that he dropped earlier. Dai Hui thought that he could maintain the advantage and answered peculiarly. Ruifeng could see through his deceptive maneuvers and mocked him for being an idiot. Ruifeng enlightened him about the possibilities that could occur when he reported the incident. He clarified that it was because of him that most players realized about the fake sword incident. Dai Hui confidently exclaimed that Ruifeng, who was a victim, was not technically dead in their eyes, which meant that the report would not be accepted in the eyes of the sect. Dai Hui's understanding of the game flourished, and he thought that he had accurately cornered Ruifeng in this persuasive battle. Thinking that he had gained the upper hand, Dai Hui began leaving the confrontation. He had managed to win over Ruifeng by deploying simple strategies. However, Ruifeng had something else to say. He mocked him yet again for being an idiot who thought the others also shared his brain. Provoked, Dai Hui turned to restate that if he dared report him, Ruifeng could suffer a similar report, and suffer a similar penalty. However, Ruifeng clarified that his analysis was indeed correct, except for the simple fact that he had forgotten having killed Ruifeng. which meant that he had no regard to care for the rules after losing his progress. Dai Hui began to panic, reminding himself of his own words. Rui Feng questioned if he was thinking about escaping punishment after death. He was within the devil's grasp and could not do much except complain. He felt that he could very well leave his equipment in the hands of his subordinates for him to retrieve once he was resurrected. Rui Feng expressed that he would ensure that there would be a report in the eyes of the sect leader. Dai Hui stubbornly furthered that he would not give in so easily. Rui Feng clarified that after issuing the report, he had no reason to worry about killing him, as there would be a killing order sent after Dai Hui. Cornering him in this persuasive battle, Rui Feng confessed that he was in no rush to hunt his prey and had no plans to kill him so early. Trapped in a corner with nothing else to do, Dai Hui questioned what he sought from him. Rui Feng insisted that he explain the matter regarding the fake and the real swords. After explaining the whole situation, Rui Feng further explained that Li Huang had more tricks. The game was challenging to navigate through, and all answers pointed to him likely having exited the mountain. Dai Hui countered that it could be otherwise, as the two disciples in charge of sealing the mountain were strictly guarding the main path, which meant he used a different way to escape. The question was of how they could correctly tail him without being led into a dead end. Rui Feng insisted that they should hurry at once while he was on his escape route. A feeling of intrigue boiled up from within him to meet the competent strategist responsible for riling up the crowd. The fake sword trap was a success in attracting a large number of players. The scene switched to Huang, who reflected on wanting to take a break before resuming his journey. He felt the presence of the other players nearby and had 3 fake swords left. Huang thought that it was enough to help him escape 3 more hurdles and had little equipment to work with. Of course, the players were not just stupid and would immediately notice him if he dropped a sword right in front of them. He needed more equipment and swords to execute the remainder of his plan. However, just as he was about to do, a player confronted him, an enemy that was able to catch him from behind, someone who was hiding specifically to ambush him for a while. Huang realized that this player was actually a female, an unordinary sight for him. He was pleasantly surprised and thought highly of her looks. Huang was cautious of this woman as she could have more allies. To his surprise, she was actually aware of the equipment and the fake sword that he had buried in the ground. Huang tried a different approach by offering her a candy-like pill. She was dazzled to receive it in kind. After observing the pill correctly, she questioned its contents and wondered if it was a drug. Cornered, Huang confessed that it was known as the 10-fat fragrance, which was a drug known for putting others to sleep after consumption. After this revelation, she thought of him as a scumbag who was trying to deceive her. Huang confessed that he was trying to evade people. Intrigued, he asked how she was able to locate him. She replied that it was due to observing his careful and considered movements. She furthered that a player's inventory had limited space despite whatever size, meaning that his fake sword tactic did not require more swords, but instead more equipment to forge them. She assumed that he was going to bury the equipment and silently observe the fights take place. Huang was intimidated by her accurate deduction skills and inquired about her name. Liu Xia introduced herself properly, a name that spelled trouble for Huang as she was well known as the #1 Qinggong player within the sect. Aside from that, her cultivation level boasted a strong status for anyone else to match, more impressive than the registered #1 player of the Sintian sect. Huang proposed that there was no point in them to fight. She replied with a different proposal, suggesting that they could go offline together. After the countdown, neither of them refused to back down and actually withdrew their swords, exposing each other's tactic. Huang took the blame and confessed that it was natural for them to be wary of each other. Considering that she was also on the lookout for the real sword, he led up a different offer. 10 minutes flew by since their wait. Huang expressed that they were just here to watch others fight. Xia did not trust him despite agreeing to his initial conditions. She was angry that nothing extraordinary had occurred within the past 30 minutes. Just in front of them were the players who observed the fake sword that remained on the ground. Liu Xia bolstered a resolve to fetch the sword herself. The battle between the group began, giving Huang the perfect opportunity to run away while she was busy. Contrary to his expectations, she caught up with him in a mere moment and lashed out at Huang for failing to keep his word again. She was also interested in testing his skills. Finally, Xia asked him to give her all of his fake swords as she had a more efficient strategy to deploy. Huang happily handed over the 3 blades and wondered if she was a promising strategist. Huang commended her Qinggong and was happy that no one else was in his way. Huang was delighted trying to form his escape, but once again the unavoidable Liu Xia ailed him down. Huang inquired if she had been waiting for a while. Xia confirmed that there was nothing to worry about and directed his attention to the ones who anticipated him. The figures were revealed to be none other than Dai Hui, accompanied by Rui Feng. Huang was annoyed that she led them right to him. Huang explained that it was his classmate, Dai Hui, who was at the forefront, explaining that he was only here for Huang. Rui Feng reflected that he planned to let Dai Hui lead him to his target only so that he could kill both Huang and Hui together. However, with the appearance of the formidable Liu Xia, he thought of coming up with a newer plan to make up for the fact. Rui Feng's attention turned to the spy lurking from within the bushes. It was a player who confessed that he was passing by. Rui Feng did not buy his excuse and threatened to kill him if he refused to come out. The man decided to reveal himself, with Huang exclaiming that he was Qi Sijie. The name shocked both Dai Hui and Liu Xia, who did not expect the third strongest player of the Wudong sect to appear. However, the man seemed to have a different opinion and stated that he was not Siji. Huang questioned why he was hiding if he was not planning a sneak attack. The man replied that he was passing by and wanted to leave at once. Ruifeng sensed that Liu Xia was already a problem, and then the mysterious Qi Sijie also appeared. Ruifeng signaled Dai Hui to commence their attack. They both cooperated in a strike to hunt down the mysterious man. Ruifeng sliced him with a potent strike, shocking Xia with her wondering why they unnecessarily engaged in an assault. The man fell to the ground with Dai Hui complaining that he did not even have to do anything. Xia was worried that they would also be killed as a consequence, but Huang seemed to display no worry because the man that was just attacked was only playing dead. Ruifeng understood this and launched a second strike to finish him off for good. He was able to evade the strike and ran away to Huang's side. Dai Hui contemplated what Huang was scheming so quietly. He exclaimed that despite being classmates, he had no intentions of going easy on the sword thief, which led to the joint idea of taking down Huang altogether. Huang also observed that this mysterious person was cunning. He was explicitly taking note of the situation and their relationships and made a calculated decision as a result. He also offered Xia to join him and Huang against Dai Hui and Ruifeng. Realizing that their numbers could pose a problem, Dai Hui suggested that she join their side as they could receive the rewards together by obtaining the sword. His persuasive maneuver was tattered when the supposed Siji pointed out the threat of the one standing just behind him. Dai Hui himself was afraid that Ruifeng would keep the sword for himself, but countered that they should only worry about such problems after obtaining the blade. Huang also exposed his classmates, adding more to his worries when it came to Ruifeng. Ruifeng assessed the situation correctly, breaking Hui's mind. To make matters even more interesting, Huang stated that he was no longer planning to keep the sword and inquired if anyone else wanted it. Obviously, this came as a surprise to the others when they observed the real Tai sword in its glory. Even Ruifeng could confirm that the object was real, while Xia could not comprehend how Huang fearlessly exposed the blade. Huang targeted Siji, stating that he was fine with offering the blade up to Xia because they were friends. However, this was actually a cunning strategy to make him the center of attention. Huang also inquired if anyone else was interested in taking it. Ruifeng immediately demanded the sword to be given to him. Huang questioned his intentions, exploring the possibility of him killing them right after obtaining the weapon. Ruifeng stated that he would let him live specifically. Although the proposal tempted Huang, he certainly saw through the strategy and shocked everyone by tossing the blade to Liu Xia instead. With the blade flinging in the air, Ruifeng quickly maneuvered to catch it before her. Xia did not know what Huang had planned, but confidently charged to grab hold of the sword. She actually managed to snatch the sword as well. However, Ruifeng was dangerously close to her vicinity. This was when Xia realized that Huang specifically tossed her the blade so that she could become the first victim of Ruifeng. In an effort to subside her fate, she threw the weapon away to increase her chances of survival. Huang was able to catch it at once and made a run for it while he could. Ruifeng continued his assault on the compromised Xia even after she had lost the valuable item. Ruifeng was impressed by his analytical ability. Huang had safely assessed that Ruifeng feared Xia the most, which was why he made her his first target. Huang did his best to run away, but was chased after by Sijie and Dai Hui. Sijie affirmed to him that his strategy to run was not the brightest in regard to his fickle martial arts skill. Huang offered to give him the sword at once, but Sijie advised him not to try the same tactic as he did, unlike Liu Xia. Realizing that he was not one to be swayed with ease, Huang targeted Dai Hui next with the proposal to sell him the weapon. Dai Hui reflected that he had no idea what he was scheming, although he was certain that he could make it to the Wudong sect the fastest if it turned out to be true. He decided to buy the sword, seeing that it was the perfect opportunity. Dai Hui happily accepted and ran away with the blade, stating that he would ensure Huang never gets bullied again by anyone for this favor. Sijie was shocked by Huang's strategy, who was standing there unfazed after pulling off an unpredictable move. Sijie ordered Xia and Ruifeng to cease their fighting, as the sword was in the hands of Dai Hui. With both their attention fixated on the man, they ran after him. Dai Hui hurried away and worried for the ones tailing him with such speed. The main issue was Liu Xia, whose Qinggong was the most difficult to deal with. Huang happily cheered for them to chase after them. She was only getting closer, causing him more significant worries with each passing step. He had put his life on the line to obtain the sword, and also within the palm of Ruifeng. Dai Hui strengthened his resolve and sought an opportunity to undo his mistakes in the past. He unusually hurried away at full speed while Xia and Sijie questioned what he was doing. After a little while, after safely reaching a different location, the miserable Dai Hui was reduced to a pitiful state after escaping them with the sword intact. He celebrated having obtained the special weapon. The Tai blade was now his and his alone. He could sense that the sword was different when compared to the others. It was only when he unsheathed the blade that he realized the depth of his situation. Dai Hui, yet again, was played by the troll Huang. He meticulously planted a fake blade instead of the real one when he tossed it away. While he was busy and frustrated with being played, a bloodthirsty Ruifeng pounced on him from behind and cornered him at last. Dai Hui tried to explain his side of the story, but Rui Feng did not hear any of his excuses after his previous stunt. Rui Feng grabbed him by the neck and demanded that he be given the sword at once. Dai Hui did his best to explain that the real sword was still with Huang. Rui Feng interrogated him, questioning if he was still playing some trick. Rui Feng was tempted to kill off Dai Hui at once. However, he wanted to exploit his connections and decided to spare him for the time being. Rui Feng threatened to kill him if he tried something else. On the other side, the person casually walking down the trail of the mountain and the mastermind behind his schemes was Huang. He thought that he had done a sufficient job by getting rid of the crew. Huang had never thought to resort to such tactics in the end, and wondered if Dai Hui had already been caught. To his surprise, Jia shocked him with her sudden appearance, and mocked him for deploying cheap tricks to save his skin. She wanted to be handed the sword after all his transgressions. Huang challenged her to a duel, stating that he would give her the sword if she won, and also promised not to use any tricks to run away. While they switched locations, Xia questioned why he even bothered stealing the sword. Huang replied with a simple answer, that it was fun. He explained that there were many exciting things in the game, and just following the rules was not enough to make up for the experience. For him, enjoying meant exploring all parts of the game. That was his way of honoring such a brilliant environment. His explanation peeved Jia, and he could not comprehend his thought process. She conveyed that enjoying the rewards and becoming stronger was her philosophy of paying respect instead. Saying so, she hurled a blade at him, a weapon that stabbed his body. Not only that, Jia asserted that it was an unordinary weapon. Huang realized that the weapon was imbued with poison and acted worried at first. To her dismay, Huang revealed that he was actually invulnerable to every kind of poison within the game. He consoled Xia, who wasted her precious money and used the poisonous dart on an opponent who was invulnerable to them. Frustrated, she lunged forth with a more physical approach, aiming to strike him down with her palms. Huang took note of the technique Soft Cloud Point and countered appropriately with his impressive reaction speed. Xia was shocked at how he was able to keep up with her despite the technique. Huang confidently explained that exploring the world of Jianghu allowed them to gain new skills. Xia communicated during their clash that she was uninterested in learning all kinds of martial arts and cultivated a specific skill better than others. Huang asserted that it was one of the downsides of practicing in such a way, but it was beneficial for him. Xia was stopped in her tracks, while Huang capitalized on the moment and struck her with a strike. Xia was most unimpressed by the potency of the attack, as it had no effect at all. Huang confessed that this was the drawback of his unique cultivation, as although he possessed knowledge, he ended up lacking in strength. Xia continued her added assault. She was glad that there was nothing from him that she needed to be afraid of. During the battle, diversifying one's knowledge was beneficial in a situation, as learning various arts was more advantageous than honing one specific type. Even experts like Liu Xia, Rui Feng, and Xia had cultivated a particular type of martial arts to the very core. They were fixated on a single aspect of cultivation. However, for Huang, the case was different as he practiced many different martial arts. Even though Xia had seen through his weaknesses, the question remained if he let her spot his downside on purpose, as in all battles, exposing weaknesses intentionally was actually one of the methods to launch a surprising counterattack. When Huang reused a previous tactic, Xia thought to speed up her attack and felt that she was able to break through his defense. However, she was stopped in her tracks when Huang caught her blow. He also held his giant blade, aiming to finish the battle. He had locked her down in the perfect trap. Even an expert like her could tell that an attack from this distance meant her demise. Huang descended his blade while bidding farewell to his classmate. She was about to meet her end when Huang was taken by surprise by an attack he did not account for. The wind pressure alone was enough to tell that it was the shaking mountain palm of Siji, with its speed and power being much more impressive than the last. Huang hurled away to evade the strike. The palm strike was headed toward Xia, who quickly resorted to activating her Qinggong, hoping for a chance to survive the blow. The attack impacted Xia and sent her flying into the forest. Fortunately, she was capable of activating her final move just in time and was also devastated to survive the weakened palm strike. Sija made his appearance in front of Huang, who expected him to be the only one capable of using such a move. Sija had been observing their battle in private and commended Huang's battle skills. He was planning to cooperate with Xia to form a joint assault on him. An irritated Xia complained that his attack nearly took her out instead. Huang butted in, stating that he most likely noticed that he switched swords when he dealt with Dai Hui. Sija confirmed that he knew the guy would not just hand over the actual object so easily. He was also interested in having a conversation with him. They shared a small banter, which ended in Sija proposing Xia for their joint attack on Huang. Huang advised her not to trust his words. He deduced that Sija was waiting for the right moment, and if he so wanted to cooperate, he would have come out sooner instead of hiding. He furthered that Sija was observing their martial arts and waited for the perfect opportunity to take them head on. But unfortunately, he was unable to kill him even then. He warned her that he posed a threat to her life. Xia considered his words and was successfully persuaded by Huang. Siji offered that they could battle it out to the death. Huang expressed that he was going to rest while they argued with each other. Sija could not tell what he was plotting. Something was suspicious about his demeanor, as he was not prioritizing running away. That was when Xia took note of Huang's hand signs. He was actually using this moment to send out a secret message. She called his trick. Huang was surprised that Xia was observing him to this level. He wanted to finish sending his message, while Siji mocked him for requesting backup. Huang advanced to strike Siji with his blade, who was willing to take him head-on without worry. He mocked him for using a rusty sword as a weapon. Huang peeved him for accepting his private sound transmission. With this particular feature, they were able to communicate with each other without any interference. Xia wondered what they were doing while staying still. Sija told Huang that they should take out the girl first, but Huang recommended otherwise because of their distance. Sija told Huang that he should look out for himself instead of others. Huang wondered what he implied with his words, prompting Sija to reply that Xia had no motivation to call for anyone else, and within these circumstances, it was just a battle for one of them to convince her to be on their side. Sija offered Xia a cooperative assault once again, stating that they could talk about the rewards after killing Huang. Sija hastened to bring to her attention that Huang also requested a secretive backup, which meant they had little chance to act. Alerted, Xia reflected that even though Sija was annoying, what annoyed her even more was the person, Li Huang. She decisively targeted Huang, aiming to cooperate with Sija in the situation. They resumed their battle, with Huang evading her strikes to help her reconsider what she had just done. Xia countered that they would obtain the sword in any case after disposing of him. Huang questioned how she was even going to kill him without aid. That was when she realized that Sija was using this moment to request his backup. She voiced her complaint in regard to his lack of contribution during battle. Xia was annoyed and wanted to aim for him next. However, Sija's attention turned to the one who was catching up from aside. Huang was glad that his allies were here at last. The new player immediately tried to aim for Sija, who commended her sword skill and realized that she was from the Huashan sect. Siji taunted the aggressor for even trying to take him on by herself. A trembling feeling overwhelmed him when he felt the presence of Huang just behind, who clarified that he too was in this battle. Sija was at a loss for words. He was certain that Xia was keeping Huang busy. Huang enlightened him, stating that she was observing them from the woods in private. She claimed that he no longer wanted to participate in the fight with the arrival of his new allies. Huang's backup recruit revealed herself as Meng Ji, who was looking out for Huang and had also brought her friends. Sija's irritation grew to absurd levels. Huang bid him farewell and landed the finishing blow, stating that death was the most appropriate for him this way. Huang also insulted his poor equipment. He did not seem to possess anything valuable in his inventory. Huang's attention turned to the one hiding in the bushes. He called for them to come out at once. After being caught, his classmates revealed himself and insisted that there was no need to act in a hostile manner. Huang decided to lend them a suggestion given their status as classmates. He proposed that they should scatter without pretending they ever gathered here. Their negotiations were only laid to waste when a familiar voice declared that no one would leave. It was the devil Ruifeng himself who had arrived with Dai Hui accompanying him. After successfully being led to his target, Ruifeng finished the job by severing apart Dai Hui in a single strike. The whole group witnessed a murder right in front of their eyes. Huang claimed that there was no need to use such brutal ways to kill someone, but Ruifeng countered that Dai Hui was just a despicable person, and so he was only doing them both a favor by getting rid of him. Challenging him first was Meng Ji, who raced to attack Ruifeng, stating that he had no right to kill her classmate. Ruifeng was glad that someone with skill challenged her and boldly asserted that he did not discriminate between any player and was fine with exterminating her. He was able to deflect her attack, forcing Meng Jie on the back foot as she received a severe wound. Ruifeng commended her fast reaction speed and stated that he initially aimed to slice her to bits. The other group members worried about his way of handling the situation. Ruifeng countered that he was merely acting as he should in the game. To him, the fact of the game was actual. It was obvious that they, too, were involved in all sorts of deadly situations and fighting their way out. Ruifeng was attacked by a bunch of shuriken, which he was able to deflect. Meng Jie reminded her naive teammates that their opponent was not one to be taken lightly. They kept underestimating the skill of Ruifeng, who was a dedicated master at his craft. Even Boren could tell that they were acting stupidly, as Ruifeng had easily defeated their boss Dai Hui with a single strike. Ruifeng mocked them for not using their brains to assess their disadvantage properly. The group lunged forth, aiming to outnumber him with their strength. Ruifeng pleasantly welcomed them and was able to cut through the group with relative ease. He remarked that their strength was too weak to be even appropriately blocked. Meng Jie seemed to agree with her opponent and suggested that the rest should stop intervening in the battle. Ruifeng complimented her physical prowess and was eager to continue the fight with her. Huang wondered if he was also one of the rubbish people that he talked of. Ruifeng began his assault, aiming to take Huang down first. Meng Jie interfered with his assault by channeling her ability, something that Ruifeng was able to maneuver against as he lunged forth to target Huang. Boran's ally suggested that they should help Huang as he would be killed at this pace. However, he had a different strategy in mind. Boran was already annoyed that Huang became responsible for Dai Hui's downfall and hoped for his death. Huang was nearly about to be stricken down by Ruifeng's blade. Fortunately, he had expected this and deployed a sudden sword strike from the ground, catching his opponent off guard with his unique weapon. Huang asked the stunned Ruifeng's opinion on his strategy. Not only that, Meng Jie had prepared the perfect technique to finish him off while he was busy. She initiated her four-hua sword strike and hurled it in his direction. Ruifeng realized that she converted the sword's energy into rain particles to formulate the attack. Although her attack power was low, everything was concentrated as part of the sword's energy. While he was evading her strike, Huang latched from behind to attack him. Their tag-teamed assault rained heavy on Ruifeng, who could barely maneuver against them in time. Ruifeng was impressed by the two compared to the other people that he had fought. Huang was already exhausted, and yet they had not landed a single blow to disarm their opponent. Huang exclaimed that his opponent could no longer run away. That was when Ruifeng realized that his arm was made useless because of paralysis. The poison was quickly affecting his body, so he countered the flow by slicing off the troubled area. When he asked about the specifics of the poison, Huang joyfully revealed that it was a potent poison that took effect despite the disruption of blood flow. Noticing that he was poisoned, the other team members foolishly rushed to take Ruifeng down while they could. Obviously, even Huang and Meng Jie were against the naive idea. Ruifeng evaded all of their strikes and reflected on wanting to kill Huang, given his situation. He was unable to fight until he detoxified the poison. His priority was to retreat and then come back to settle scores with Huang. Huang was content with the idea of leaving him alone and recommended his team members go on instead. Boran confronted him, stating that he could go so long as he let go of the sword behind. Huang received immense support from his female comrades, who did not want the boys to bully Huang. Shuming offered that he would deal with them while he was busy with Huang. He had no intentions of killing them and planned a different strategy. Huang's eyes set on the girl who was spying on them from above. It was Xia who questioned what he wanted. Huang took her interest by offering up the sword for absolutely free. They were assaulted by Xi Ming, who devised a strategy to separate the two from each other. Meng Jie and Huang were both distanced because of his attack. The serious Xi Ming was also not far from using lethal strikes. He instructed his fellow party members to aim at Huang. They were content with chasing him down. Huang ran for his life while Boran and the others hurried after him. Huang begged for Xia's help, who deeply considered what should be done. In an effort to snatch the sword, she blocked her from the front. Huang reminded them that she was one of the strongest Qinggong masters around and should not be taken lightly. Xia was annoyed and wanted to take him down first. Their chase began, but the tables soon turned with Boran and his group chasing after both Xia and Huang. Huang suggested that there was one way they could avoid this situation, but it required some assistance from Xia. While she was busy interpreting his words, Huang relieved himself of his heavy weapon and tossed it toward Xia, weighing her down. The troll continued his run, stating that it was the only reason he was slower than the others, and felt relieved losing the weapon. Huang found a comfortable spot and hid behind the tree. However, he did not anticipate the demonic girl to catch up so quickly from behind. She was infuriated that he played her yet again. Suddenly, Huang had an astonishing realization. He informed her that their hunt was over and took out the actual blade, naming her the new owner of the weapon. Huang confirmed what she saw as the actual sword in its entirety, the fact that she grappled with and could not accept with ease. Huang remarked that he had no more reason to lie as his mission to steal the sword had already been foiled and failed, which genuinely came as a shock to her. He tossed her the sword, stating that it was no longer of use to him. Huang assured her that she would know if it were real by simply retrieving the weapon back to the sect for inspection. Xia inquired why he riled up so much trouble over an anticlimactic ending. Huang casually replied that it was solely for entertainment. She wanted to strike him down but resisted the urge. Huang sought her help with a specific matter. He alerted her that Ruifeng was actually jeopardizing his classmates at present. Xia was surprised because she was certain that he had run away after being inflicted with the poison. We were shown the events from 10 minutes prior, the battle between Meng Jie and her opponent Xi Ming. Meng Jie was actually at a disadvantage because of the injury she suffered from Ruifeng in her previous battle. Boran advised the two to cease the meaningless fight as Huang had already fled from the area. Xi Ming was told to let them go. He actually ended up becoming an enemy of the girls by offending them. While they were busied bantering a meaningless matter, the force of nature, Ruifeng, reappeared, declaring that no one was allowed to leave the area. Both Boran and Meng Jie were shocked as to how he came back, but Ruifeng was only concerned with Huang's whereabouts and insisted on knowing. Boran tried to reason with him, stating that he had already fled the area. Ruifeng inquired about the specifics of his location, and after receiving an insufficient answer, he disposed of Boran's teammate with one strike. The agitated Ruifeng reiterated that he was in no mood to repeat himself. Meng Jie tackled him head-on and urged everyone to retreat. She was worried as his movements sharpened more than before. Unfortunately, despite her best efforts, Meng Jie was stabbed because of his incredible speed. She was killed in one move, an event that shocked the rest of the party members. Ruifeng demanded the location of Huang and stated that he would slaughter all of them if they failed to answer. We were shown what happened when he escaped from the party after the poison. Ruifeng at this moment properly inspected the poison, and no matter his best efforts was unable to remove the pain. However, when he saw his hand fainting away the color, he realized something crucial. The poison was simply a tricky tactic. The tint was responsible for the paralysis of his hand. Having felt fooled at the hands of the monkey Li Huang, his only desire brimmed with exacting revenge. No amount of reason could make him content. He only sought to kill after suffering such humiliation. Facing the nearly dead Mengji, he inquired about Li Huang's location, and upon her refusal to answer, Ruifeng decided to strike down one of her allies. Boran and Mengji were convinced that he had gone crazy by lashing out in such a way. Ruifeng assured them that each incorrect answer would result in a proper death. The party members feared his presence, and one by one, they began being slaughtered for not giving him a proper answer. A contemplative Boran could not shake off the fact that he entered an agitated state and aimed for everyone in the party. Shiming advised him to run while they could, as they possessed no chance of defeating him. Shiming also stated that they could use the opportunity to find Huang and snatch the sword while Ruifeng was busy with the group. When Boran showed concern for his classmates, Shiming plotted his escape, stating that he had no plans to waste time with him. Noticing the escaped member, Ruifeng reacted at once by stabbing him from behind and neutralizing his escape. Ruifeng mocked him for thinking that he was unable to see through his strategy. He was primarily going to kill him differently. Shiming begged for his life to be spared and pleaded that he would unveil the whereabouts of Huang. Mengjie and Boran thought it was stupid of him to admit that, because then they would indeed be slaughtered. Shiming provided Ruifeng with an adequate explanation and begged to be spared. The devil Ruifeng remarked that he was not going to waste his time killing trash. He mocked Shiming for thinking highly of himself and let him chase after Huang. We were now back to the present, where Huang was conversing with Xia about their plan. Huang was confident that he would not be killed by the devil so quickly, but what he did not anticipate was his sudden arrival while he was busy. Huang turned to notice his presence, while Ruifeng declared that he would soon die. Saying this, he charged at once. Huang instructed Xia to run off while he stopped him in his tracks. Having noticed that she was escaping the area, Ruifeng targeted her with his sword. The blade was nearly about to strike her when Huang intervened and deflected the attack. He reminded Ruifeng that his target was himself. Ruifeng felt gleeful and stated that he would soon finish him off. Huang questioned why he killed off his classmates, as they had nothing to do with their matter. Ruifeng replied that he did not need any reason to kill useless opponents. His response agitated Huang, who for the first time seriously remarked that he was interested in killing someone without mercy. He lunged forth with his first strike, an attack that Ruifeng dodged. Ruifeng found his speed just about average and wondered if he had anything more to show. Huang mocked him for receiving the pushback with such a simple assault. Ruifeng countered that he was interested in drawing out the battle to kill his victims slowly. After he launched his skill, Huang distanced himself and caught Ruifeng's attention. Huang explained that he was using an ordinary qinggong and was not interested in explaining the specifics. He shot a dagger in his direction, something that Ruifeng could deflect with relative ease. The blade actually had a secondary effect and tried to pierce his armor but shattered on impact. Ruifeng pitied the boring attack, while Huang remarked that he was trying to predict his opponent's movements and was surprised by Ruifeng's defensive capabilities. His excuse was enough to receive Ruifeng's attention. Huang was confident that his opponent had taken the perfect bait. He questioned if Ruifeng had it in him to take him out. Ruifeng stated that they should have a fair fight and mocked Huang's inferior martial arts for being incapable of dealing with him. Sensing the perfect opportunity, Huang decided to deploy a speedy assault, stating that he had yet to show all of the tricks up his sleeve. Ruifeng was sent flying with his pointed strike. However, he was still able to counter Huang in some regard with his weapon. Ruifeng received the brunt of the blow and could not comprehend the level of martial arts that Huang possessed. Huang, on the other hand, was bent on keeping his secrets private. Ruifeng shockingly remarked that he was no longer interested in fighting. He showed his back to Huang, exclaiming that he could not defeat him with his level of martial arts. However, this too was a strategy. He did this to fool his opponent in the hopes of killing him while he dropped his guard. Huang called for his attention, reiterating that he knew what he was thinking. He saw through his feeble attempt to kill him and tore his plan to pieces. He also intimidated him by revealing that he had no interest in killing Ruifeng, as he was already in due process of his death. Huang, who was enjoying the moment, exclaimed that Ruifeng was poisoned. The word poison plagued his mind, with Ruifeng questioning how he could have been poisoned as he did not even sense his body reacting to it. Huang clarified that he had no understanding of this special type of poison, as it had not affected him internally, but rather externally. Huang pointed to the ones that hovered just behind Ruifeng. The poison that he kept mentioning was actually the Wudang sect disciples. The formidable NPC declared that he was guilty of violating sect rules and needed to be taken down at once. Ruifeng was shocked that the S-rank NPC, Ling Feixiao himself, was called by Huang as part of his strategy. Ruifeng contemplated that he did not lose to his opponent because of the difference in their martial arts, but instead because of underestimating his opponent. Ruifeng consumed a poisonous pill to dispose of himself, and reflected that he did not anticipate someone to stoop so low. He deeply desired to exterminate Huang for his antics. Using the opportunity, the sly Huang tried to evade the NPC but was caught at once. Ling Feixiao named him the sword thief and told him to stop at once. Huang scoffed at his chances. He was certain of his chances and knew that he could not defeat such a strong opponent. Even then, he was glad not to share the blame for the events in the game. In a sudden twist of events, the game master decided to kill all of the players, forcing a log out. The story ended with Li Huang taking off his helmet, satisfied with the events that occurred.
Don't forget to like and comment for the next part. Join our Discord for the name of the book and subscribe for more videos from us.